Hello, hello. Welcome to Sis Let's Talk Leadership. My name is Kristi Burns,
And I'm Melissa Walsh.
and this is where we unmask the myths.
And we own the journey.
And so today you have the pleasure of just speaking with Melissa and I. There's no guest today, guys, but we wanted to come on here and speak on leading from a place of knowing yourself, which we think ties right into self-awareness. So when we were discussing this initially, we were speaking on just like different emotions and things that come up when you may be dealing with challenging situations, or you may not have a challenging situation. You're literally just trying to make sure that you're having that emotional intelligence to lead from a place that is good and that is with no ill intent, maybe, if that's a good way to say it. Um,
Yeah.
Self-awareness for me is kind of just like knowing what my triggers are.
hmm
You know, I think affirmations kind of go along with that too, like affirming yourself and then also being able to like accept feedback, which is some of the things that we spoke on for things that maybe you had good intent, but that wasn't the reality of how that person received it. So now I need to be self-aware of that and then be intentional about making a change. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on like,
So I've been thinking a lot about this and kind of prepping for some things. And um, as most of our listeners that listen in every week know, starting with a new team and leading a new team that you don't know can be very tricky. And one of the things that I'm kind of hoping to do, someone actually asked me a really good question today. They're like, oh, you've been here this long now. Like, what is your vision? Like, do you have a plan on how to build up this team and like keep them engaged and open up doors of opportunities and develop them professionally? And they laughed at me because I smirked when they asked. I was like, actually, I do. I do have a plan. And I'm like, and it's not as big as you think it is. I'm like, it's actually a domino effect. And they were like, oh, really? Like, that sounds interesting. And I was like, here's the deal. Most people, and I drew this model on a dry erase board because we've had a dry erase board available. And I was like, most people in the spectrum of engagement, like we make the decision how engaged we want to be as leaders, clinicians, or providers, or however you think about it, or as individuals just at home, right? And most people live within a medium range of that, like right in the middle, like, oh yeah, I show up to work, I do a good job, I take care of my patients, I take care of my family, I do it with a smile, I'm pleasant about it. And then you have kind of like a lower quadrant of those people. They're like, listen, I showed up to work, my task got done, or hey, I got up this morning, I did my chores, I ran my errands, I paid my bills, I'm good. I don't need to do anything extra.
mm-hmm,
And then you have the top 10%,
mm-hmm,
which is like the people that go above and beyond and they invest in themselves and they listen to podcasts like ours and
mm-hmm.
they read all the books and they make all the connections and they just are like on cloud nine for everything that is important to them. And I was like, so you see that 10%? That's what I need to leverage, because that 10% is then going to engage the 80% of the people that are in the middle. And we talked about like you need worker bees and you need queen bees. Oh, you need these yes, girl. So you need these leaders to then pour that excitement and that enthusiasm onto others. And I was like, and you know what? The people that just want to show up and do their thing, them. You had a great recommendation, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I got some of that from.
Yeah,
You
Mill
had a great yes, to listen to this preaching, which was awesome. And he talked about let them in a way that is not reckless, right? Like in a way where it's you build connections, you make something meaningful. So guess what? That lower 10%, they just want to do their job. At least they showed up to work. Did they do it with a smile? No, but they showed up. We appreciate that because we still need those people. What I said to this individual is like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I have two plans. With my immediate leadership team, this is what I'm developing in them. With the bigger supportive leadership team, this is what I'm going to do with them. And I'm going to tell you what I learned. So with the bigger group of leaders that support our department, we're going to do an exercise based on a book called Leadership 101. In Leadership 101, what they found in some of the data that they collected is that emotional intelligence is still the most marketable skill for any individual out in the workforce. But what builds up emotional intelligence, which you touched upon, and it literally starts with self-awareness. So the book defines self-awareness as the knowing your values and knowing your triggers. And if you know both, you will develop emotional intelligence. And you had a lot of great feedback about triggers. Like if you know your triggers, if you truly take the time to get to know your triggers, you said something super fun, just foundational earlier as we were prepping, which was, I need to name it. If I can name the trigger, what did you say? You can.
If I can name the trigger, then I can tame it. Like I can respond versus react. And
Yeah.
I feel like we've been there so many times and we've spoke on it in so many sessions. And the truth about it is you can't get away from it. Like that
Yeah.
is a one-on-one, like you said, leadership foundation. And that's why it comes up on all of our sessions. That's why it comes up with all of our guests. That's why it comes up between you and I. It's because, I mean, it's kind of like just not forgetting where you came from. One-on-one foundation. Don't forget, like, hey, that's a trigger. Be intentional about changing.
Yeah, and that's important. So what the part of the exercise that we will move into with this particular team
Mhm,
is I'm actually going to ask them if they know what their values are.
mhm,
And I think a lot of people, we don't pause. It's not something that comes inherently to us to pause and think about what are my values? And I feel like you and I, that's something that we spend a lot of time with. And I shared my three core values with you being integrity, faith, and family.
mhm,
And, with those being my three core values, things that I'm doing, decisions that I'm making, if it compromises any of those three, they're not for me.
mhm.
Right. And then when I think about my triggers and I think about like things that really upset me, like I mean, generally speaking, people don't like people lying to them.
Yeah.
If I am asking you, I already know the truth.
Mhm,
I am giving you an opportunity to give me your rendition of
mhm,
what happened. Like,
mhm,
I'm not asking you because I don't know. I probably know to a certain extent what happened, what is going on, and I'm trying to meet with you and say, hey, let's resolve this together. We all make mistakes. We all have bad moments. We all get short fused. I have a very expressive face and we all make faces that maybe we shouldn't have made or we just didn't know, but part of being self-aware, right? So we'll move through kind of trying to figure out what individual values are and what triggers are. And then there's a couple of prompt questions. And the first one is, I think, by far my favorite is how do you navigate throughout your day, throughout everyday life being triggered? Like if you think of your trigger, like how do you navigate that? And if I think of myself,
mhm,
even 3 years ago,
mm.
I was so hard on myself. I was not kind to myself.
Yeah.
I was not patient with myself. I was so hypercritical of
Mhm,
everything that I did. And I was like, man, I really messed up. I did that. And now I'm not a good leader. This is not the right role for me. I'm not made for this. I truly questioned all of these decisions.
yeah.
And then you taught me a very key quote, which is the title of Yes, and we had this great conversation and you're like, when I think one of our first sessions, were we talking with Joyce Baker? I think it was that session or it might have been just before that, but I think it was like one of our first topics where you were talking about, like, you started out your journey and you were leading from a place of proving yourself. And then you decided that you were never going to allow anybody to believe more in you than yourself.
Mhm,
And then you made this big transition, which is a very hard transition to do from, mentality wise, moving into a space of knowing yourself.
mhm,
And it's like, okay, but how do you get to know yourself? Like, what does that look like? How do you do that? For me, it took a lot of, yes, reading leadership books, but also talking to experienced leaders
mhm,
and hearing how, like, they went through the hard things and they came out on the other side better for it.
mhm. 'Cause you know what
And
they
it
say,
really,
teachable.
yeah. And I think that's important. Like, it's important to have a core group of people that you can talk to about the hard things, to be vulnerable with and feel safe being vulnerable, knowing that you're not going to be judged. But I know Sarah Basalik was one of our guests
Mhm,
earlier on. And I remember the first time that like I had something happen and I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like my heart sink into my stomach. And that's all I said to her. And we were talking about something specifically. And she's like, wow, that sounds like it was really hard. I kid you not, that comment made me cry.
mhm.
I felt so just understood. Like she was just,
Seen, heard.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. It made a world of a difference for me in that moment. She's like, that must have just been so hard.
Mhm,
For someone to say, yeah, it's hard, like not saying it was right or wrong, but it's like, it sounds like this was hard for you. That
mhm,
sounds really hard.
mhm,
Like, and I think that that's when I started to realize, like, hey, I'm being very hard on myself.
mm.
and I don't need to be. Like, I do more good than I do mistakes. And if
Yes.
I make yeah, you know what I mean? Like, just,
Yeah.
like,
Oh
have
my
you ever
gosh.
gone through, like,
Yes,
a
giving
phase of
yourself grace,
things?
like what we talk about, giving yourself that grace.
Yes.
You have to give yourself grace. Like we're harder on ourselves probably than the situations or anything that we face would make us. You know what I'm saying? Or I guess like basically how we would respond to it. Like I feel like we're our worst critic is what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
And you have to be intentional about not doing that. And so, what I'm trying to be intentional about right now, and in this season, because it's kind of like this, and I'm not going to do this, but it's definitely one of those, I'm trying to be intentional about what the Lord says about captivating those thoughts.
Mm.
Because it starts in the mind with being hard on yourself. It starts in the mind with self reflection. It even starts in the mind with when you find out whatever it is that you need to reflect on with being intentional. It all starts here. So if I cannot captivate these thoughts,
Mhm.
how in the world am I going to navigate situations? And it's oftentimes where I feel like we will be put in the same test over and over again if we do not pass it. And I have found that like over my journey, like this is something that I literally recently had to tell myself over my journey within leadership and all the leadership roles that I've held, I had a different challenge that needed to be navigated that promoted some type of self reflection
Mm.
that catapulted me to the next position. Now, while I was going through it, it was hard, horrific, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't, I mean, it was tough. It was challenging. But what I realized is when I finally passed it, I wasn't complacent. I didn't go backwards. I got
Mm.
a promotion spiritually to overcome
Mhm.
the next lesson and to self-reflect on that and then do the same thing. But literally over the years of everything that I've had or every leadership position that I've been in, I've been catapulted to the next thing because I overcame the test. But the challenge is when you overcome the test, like, are you self-reflecting enough to know that you're in another challenge or that you
Mhm.
are dealing with another situation and that, okay, all right, Lord, what's the lesson in this so that I can figure it out so that we can, figure out whatever that next purpose is that you have for me. Because all of it's leading to our purpose. Passion leads to purpose, and that's kind of where we are. I wanted to point out as well that in the book that we're reading with the Breadcrumb Legacy, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was chapter 4, where Jan Fried talked about ego.
Mm.
Ego is part of self-reflection. But what Jan Fried pointed out is that everybody has two egos. Every single one of us. You have two egos. Both egos are working hard to protect you. One is a dog, the other one is a wolf. Whichever one you feed the most is the one that's going to protect you in that manner.
Mhm.
So if you continue to feed the wolf is going to overtake you. And when you self-reflect, that wolf ego is not even going to let you get to the core of what the problem is so that you can overcome whatever it is you need to overcome. Or you need to develop that emotional intelligence since that's kind of what we're feeding it to. But if you're feeding the dog who is, more polite, has a little bit more patience, very friendly, when you think about, a dog's personality,
Yeah.
at least from a pet perspective, um, you're a little bit more patient,
So not a stray dog.
I know, no, not a straight up. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, but not a mutt either. I'm talking about a pure bred, whatever breed of a dog that you like or that you had.
Yeah.
Mine are hypoallergenic. Whole nother story. When I feed that part of my ego, that is what to me like helps me respond versus
Mhm.
react and turn
Mhm.
into have an emotional, regulation or intelligence. And then, hopefully passing that test as well
Mhm.
or there's no hope. We're gonna say in passing the next test,
Yeah.
it gets you to the next point. So it's tough, but it can be done, and it's been proven that it can be
Yeah.
done.
Something that's so interesting to me, like, is when I listen to people talk about, like, neuroplasticity and how
Mhm.
we can train our brain to learn new skills. And something that never really occurred to me is that our mindset, the way that we process, the way that we think is actually you have to reframe the neuroplasticity of your brain. So several years ago, I went through a divorce
Mhm.
and it was really hard. And man, I feel for people that have to go through that and really admire people that can work through the challenges of, what sometimes marriage can be. Not that it is always, but it can be hard. And some things I'm glad that a lot of things you can work through. And for me, unfortunately, I couldn't. And it led to divorce. And I remember being so hard on myself. And you'll start to see a pattern. And I went to therapy because I was like, man, like I cannot live life feeling guilty and feeling like I failed. Like I failed at marriage. I failed at something that I wanted so badly to work out, especially when you have children and you have a family. And I mourn the failure of that marriage.
Mhm.
And one of the first things that the therapist had me do was like, hey, did it ever occur to you that it takes two people to cause a failure in a marriage? I was like, it did, but I didn't live there very long. I just started to immediately, because that's the other side of the coin of self-awareness, right? Like, make sure that what you learn about yourself is not something you weaponize for yourself, right? Like you said, those weapons should not be used. We're not encouraging people to learn about themselves so that they feel like they're less than or their shortcomings or focus on those things, but rather, hey, learn that this is something that is hard for you and then find mechanisms, build
At work.
neuroplasticity to help you
Yep.
through that. So one of the exercises that my therapist had me do was like, hey, until we meet again, I want you every time that you have a negative thought about yourself, say something positive about yourself.
Mm.
And it started out, the example she gave me, she's like, sometimes when something happens, like, oh, maybe you forgot your keys in the car and I'm so dumb. She's like, don't say that. Say, oh man, I was rushing. I was rushing and I forgot to grab the keys.
Mm.
Right? It's a fact.
Mhm.
It's not degrading to myself. It's not putting me down. It's not shutting me down or making me less than. It's saying,
Mhm.
I was rushing. I forgot the keys in the car.
Mhm.
And that alone, it took, like you said, it takes time. It takes dedication and commitment to yourself to learn these things. But that is a skill that, to your point, it's a foundational building block that
Mm.
I've carried with me.
Yeah.
And I have not allowed that negative, the lies, right? Like you're talking about the dog and the wolf in regards to ego, the two egos. It's also the truth and the lies that we tell ourselves
Mm.
because we'll believe them.
Yeah.
Whatever we think, and like when you talk about manifesting
Mhm.
and thinking and say it out loud. Another thing that I think a lot of females that have had children can relate to is, for a period of time, if I stood in front of a mirror, I had to tell myself, thank you for
Mm.
providing, for building and creating three healthy children.
Mhm.
Because there's times where I didn't feel that. There's times where like I did not feel like myself in my own body.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I started talking to myself that way. And, people were always kind. They were always thoughtful
Mhm.
and very conscientious. And I love that I'm surrounded with people like that. But it doesn't matter how many times somebody else would tell me something positive about me. If
Mm.
I didn't believe it, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
You have to be your own best cheerleader.
That's
And
right.
not because you're cocky, but because some
Yeah.
things are just true about you,
Yeah.
right? Like, hey, I'm smart, I'm
Mm.
strong, I'm kind, I'm thoughtful, I'm conscientious. You have to start speaking some truths to yourself where you
Yeah.
learn the opportunities, where you know that there are things that trigger you and things you have to work on. Hey, listen, at least at least you
Yeah.
acknowledge, like
That's the first
accepting
step.
that, yeah,
Is acknowledging it. Yeah, that's the first step. Like, I always compare it to, like, a alcoholic. You can tell an alcoholic all day, "You need help, you're an alcoholic, you need help," but it isn't until they decide themselves that they see themselves as an alcoholic and that they need help. So,
yeah.
it doesn't matter what people are telling you, if you don't believe it from within, it starts with self, then it doesn't matter. And I like that you pointed out too that you said it out loud. Like, you didn't say that you were saying it out loud, but that's what I'm getting from you is that you were in the mirror and that you were saying it out loud because what you're doing is you're speaking those things into existence. And I kind of have a bad habit sometimes of leaving it in my mind. And I have to
Mhm.
remind myself, like, say it out loud, say it out loud, say it out loud. But I wanted to speak to something else too that you kind of mentioned too, which goes along with what your therapist was letting you know. Something that I had studied and I reframed it and put it in one of my presentations, and it was the uninvited guest. So the imposter syndrome, how to overcome, fear. They're slightly different. And one of the things that I have done in the past that I was letting the audience know is something called an evidence list. What an evidence list does is it grounds you in the facts, which is what you just said. The
Yeah.
truth from the lie. And so sometimes writing it out or even writing it out and then saying it, and what you're doing is reframing whatever that negative thing is, and you're focusing on the fact, like what you said, instead of saying, oh, what was the example that you gave? That was a really good one. Put me back on
When
track.
I left the keys in the car,
when you left the keys in the car. You didn't get upset about it, but basically, you went to the factual part about it. So for the evidence list for me, it was like, I helped somebody out today.
Yeah.
I went and got a patient who wasn't a diabetic, McDonald's, because we had a McDonald's at the time in the hospital.
Wasn't a
I
diabetic.
know, right? Um, and
Details
so I
matter.
would write down all these factual positive things that I
Yeah.
did as an evidence list to track that I'm doing more good than I am bad, which is something you and I spoke on prior to, recording. And another thing too, how we talked about having those relationships and being close to people who are gonna lift you up and who are gonna, um, you can be vulnerable and you don't have to necessarily feel judged and things of that nature, is proximity. Confidence is built in proximity. So
Mhm.
aligning and being around people who are doing what you want to do or who are able
Yes.
encourage you to get where
Yes.
it is that you're trying to be because like I said, it all starts with the mind. So it's confidence built in proximity. You go start hanging out with those people. You go
Mhm.
start being in those rooms. And
Yes.
I was literally just having a conversation yesterday about your circle and who you hang around, truly matters, especially in leadership because um
Oh, this is getting serious. I love it.
it is, but it's true.
Yeah.
If I am the smartest person in the room, then I'm in the wrong room. I'm in the wrong circle. I
Right.
need to be yes, I need to be around people who are smarter than me. I need to be around people who I can gravitate to.
Yeah.
I need to be around, people who are gonna help me build my confidence, who, I don't have to worry about all of the
Yeah.
shiesty that can potentially come with things. But all of that helps you self-reflect because those
Mhm.
are going to be honest with you and they're gonna
Yes.
tell you in a way that they know you can
Uh-huh.
receive it because you all have one another and you know what does not work. So I just wanted to put that out there. Keeping an evidence list and then
Uh-huh.
confidence, which is built through close proximity of those individuals who you trust and who you can be
Mhm.
vulnerable with. So,
And that's so true. I man, you highlighted some gems right there. That
mm,
was awesome. I also you shared something that is key and was a game changer for me. And you talked about, how you're creating a list of what the wins are for
mhm,
today.
mhm,
And the wins when especially like to speak to up and coming leaders that maybe are transitioning from a clinical role or a role where they were responsible for tasks, completing tasks to now leading those tasks.
uh-huh,
I think something that you lose in that transition that we don't talk about is the pat on the back.
hmm,
You no longer have someone telling you that was great. You're doing a good job. I'm so glad you're here. All those recognitions that we send team members,
mhm,
we don't have them at the leadership. Like, if you think about like what recognition have you gotten recently that
mm-mm,
tells you like, way to go, Kristi, you're such a great leader. For us, like in one organization, it was called a mile above. In a different organization, it's called caught you caring, but it's got different titles.
yeah,
If I could tell you, my caught you carings like went completely
done,
plateau down.
yeah,
Like they were like, that's your job.
mhm,
That's the expectation. But what you're saying, it goes back to self awareness. Like if you are somebody that is very used to being academically, like,
mm,
successful
yeah,
or being clinically successful and you go into leadership and that's something you're not getting anymore, that's really hard.
mhm,
It can be very depleting and you can feel like, am I even doing a good job?
yeah,
So it's so important. What you said is keep that list of things that these are the good things I did. This is the impact I made. This is how I helped the people around me because you're no longer counting on other people telling you that. You have to count on yourself. Going back to your original comment and one of the reasons why you envisioned this podcast is to say, I refuse to ever have anybody else believe in me more than I believe in myself. Be your number one cheerleader.
be your number one cheerleader because this is definitely a thankless position or leadership can be a thankless
Yeah.
position. So we have to just be mindful of that and be our biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
Just
And
pep
find your
girl.
people,
Find your people.
right?
That's what Joyce taught us.
Joyce taught us, find your people. And you do, you're absolutely right. You need a leadership buddy. You
Mhm.
need someone that truly knows you, someone that knows your intent, knows your heart, knows your goals,
Mhm.
that will keep you grounded when
Mhm.
you don't know. where to step when you feel like you're walking on eggshells or you feel like it's just so much to bear. You need a leadership buddy.
Yeah, it's just like joining a mom group, you know? You go through
Mhm.
so much as a mom, and then you join this mom group one day, and then y'all are in there talking, and somebody has a discussion post about something that they're going through and asking for advice, and
Uh-huh.
then you come on, you be like, "Oh my gosh, you're going through that too?" And it eases you. It releases the pressure because it's like, "Okay, I'm not in this alone. Somebody else is dealing with this, more than one person. So how have you navigated this challenge? How have you overcome it so that you can kind of help me do it?" And that right there for me is more of a mental release
Mhm.
that I would need because my physical always jumps places before my mind does. And so
Yeah.
I have to be intentional about making sure that they align.
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I'm like that too.
that is together. So yeah,
Yeah.
gotta have that leadership.
Mhm. You wanna play a game?
Sure.
Sunrise or sunsets?
Sunsets.
I agree with you. I like watching the sunsets.
Yeah.
Me too. Okay. Cold weather or
Mm.
hot weather?
Alright, I'm not doing the
I
cold.
like being cold because then I get a blankie. Like, listen, I'm such a cuddler.
I will burn up before I want to be cold. Like I can do nothing. I'm like debilitated when I am cold. Like you should see my
You need
office.
to go
I
into
have 2
hibernation.
heaters. Yeah, I have 2 heaters. I have the jackets that are hanging on the back of my door. Like I just I have heaters everywhere I go. My husband can't stand me because he is you and he likes it cold and I would rather just burn up. Like I just oof.
That's amazing. I wish I could do that. And I'd rather be cold. Okay. A romantic comedy or a drama movie?
It depends on what mood I'm in. I'm gonna say drama because
Oh,
time that I'm watching it, I'm relaxing and looking for something, you know what I'm saying, different
yeah.
to do. So
I like a romantic comedy. Drama just like really stresses me out.
really,
And I'm just like, what is happening next?
it's
Or
not
like I
real.
get too invested and I'm like, they did what?
Mm. That's why
Mm-mm,
nobody
that's
likes watching
shady.
it with me. They're like, "You asking too many questions. Can you wait? If you just watch it, we're gonna all gonna get the answer at the same time. Like, just chill."
That is true. Like when
Yeah,
people ask you questions and you're watching, you're like, we're watching the same
the
thing.
same thing. Yeah,
I know what you know.
I'm that girl.
You're that girl. That's
Mhm.
awesome. That was a fun game. I learned a lot about you.
That definitely was fun. Hit me up on a sunset. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm. But I mean, let's see. If we had to leave something with our listeners, what would it be?
I would say that working on self-awareness is probably the kindest thing you can do for yourself as a leader.
And I'm going to say, once you do zone into the fact that you are aware, be careful and be mindful of what
Mm,
ego you feed because it
mm,
plays a huge role in your growth once you become aware.
yeah.
So be mindful of that and be intentional about feeding the right one. I'm not going to say which
Yeah.
is the right one, but I think we know. So, but
Make
yeah,
good choices.
make the choice. Yes. So that's what I would say.
How awesome. This is great.
I agree. I agree. So, as always, you guys, we hope that you got at least one gem. If you did, then our job is done. We truly appreciate you all tuning in. We appreciate all of the support. This is something that is just passion led and hopefully soul fed. And we hope that everyone has a great night. Thank you for tuning in to Sis Let's Talk Leadership. Bye.